Today's guest is Dayna Kneeland, who is a speaking and storytelling coach. She helps coaches discover and share their signature stories in their coaching and marketing so they can build trust and captivate their ideal clients. Dayna, thank you very much for being on. How are you doing today?
Oh, I'm great. Thanks. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's definitely a pleasure to have you on here, especially given that, what you do is such an important thing in this space because, I speak to heart-centered entrepreneurs all the time. And there's always the common theme of like, oh, I love what I do. I love the transformation that I get for people, but like, shoot me in the face when it comes to actually getting the word out there or knowing how to get the word out there. So the fact that you do it in a way that's story based and we all know, like, we all relate to stories really well, I think it's pretty cool. So I'd love for you to dive into, how you got to doing what you're doing and ultimately what brings you here today.
Oh, great. Thank you. Yes. Well, I got to doing, I became a speaking and storytelling coach because originally I was a trained stage actor, but I just fell in love with helping other people feel confident being in the spotlight and sharing their voice with the world. And one night on stage, I had this really pivotal moment happen under the hot lights where I was cast as a narrator for the first time, and I was just doing such an awful job because I had no character. I had nothing to hide behind. It was just me, like, telling a story to the audience. And this big shift happened in me, and I really realized I'm a vehicle, and my voice is for my listener, and my story is their story. And so that was really profound for me. And I started to teach, and I didn't want to teach actors. I wanted to help people in their everyday lives. I actually started working with really marginalized communities, teaching theater, and I was teaching them storytelling and helping them to feel confident with their voice. And I kept getting this same feedback all the time, that this was really empowering for them to share their stories with their community, and it was helping them to break their fear of speaking publicly. So that was a light bulb moment, like a big aha for me. And I realized, oh, okay, I can have a bigger impact and go further with this. And then as I started to grow my business, I had another really profound moment happen when my dad died, because he's an incredible storyteller, a really renowned storyteller who had a huge impact on a small community of people. And I had this thing happen where all these people were telling me, that people I didn't even know, that their lives had been changed, that he'd really saved their lives. And all these people came forward, and they collected over 90 stories that he told. It was that important to them. So I really tapped into how powerful storytelling is. And I thought, okay, this is the thread I really want to follow in my business, because what coaches are doing is it has such a ripple effect impact. And by sharing their stories, they can really take something that's really intangible and hard to talk about, and really bring heart into that, and really demonstrate the results through that. And that makes me really excited that I can be part of that ripple effect of what's happening collectively as we all do this together.
Love it, especially given that so often whether it's clients or people on the podcast, etc., like that sentiment of like your mess becomes your message. And to have somebody like yourself be able to not even like take over, but it sounds like you very much allow the person to tap into who they are, find their voice within that, and then just express it out into the world, just makes their message even more powerful. So I'd love for you to comment on that or add anything to that.
Yeah, it's true. I really help. The first part of the process is that discovery process, to really discover your story as people come up against different blocks. For some, it's like, does my story even have any value? Is my story, who would want to listen to my story? Who wants my story? Or others, they're really confused. They have so many stories to tell. They've led this huge windy path that's taken them to where they are. How do I demonstrate my credibility through that? So helping them to draw out their story and really understand, okay, what story to tell, and feel empowered telling their story, and know how to structure their story in a way that it's going to be empowering for both them and their listener. Because sometimes there are stories that are too private. We're still working with them for our own healing. And there are ways and there are stories we can find that are personal yet really professional, and are going to be really impactful and positive, and really get results. and be empowering for our listener as well.
Love it. So on that note, what's the story that brings you here today?
Oh, the story that brings me here today, well, we can go back to my storytelling dad. He's a full-on hippie. You just picture the long braids, the bandana, you know, wouldn't dress up for anybody. And just an incredible, huge heart. And he was really horrible with money. And I think he just wanted to give everything away for free. And I think I've really adopted that, because I'm at the point in my business where I feel like there's kind of a cap on my growth, because I haven't raised my rates for years and years and years. I really love being having my offer be accessible to people. I really love that feeling. And so now I'm kind of looking at, okay, how do I keep growing, but I'm kind of reaching that cap in myself and coming into, I guess, my own worth about what I do, right? And the value of what I have to offer. Can I really make real money and more money being a coach, being a storytelling coach?
Okay, got it. So, like, you're very self-aware when you share this. You're like, okay, so I can see the past of this. This was repeated to me a long time. I'm aware that probably it's now starting to seep into what I do with the business. I want to be accessible for everybody else, but I also have these goals. There's like conflicting parts there. So from the outside looking in, like it sounds to me like you're very aware of what the problem is. So being a coach yourself, what would you coach yourself on to close that gap?
There's definitely a disconnect between what I know and the deeper layer of it, of how it actually lands in me, like how it's feeling inside when I go to move forward with it. It's like, oh, I know it's worthwhile. I know the impact, I know the power that this has for people. But yeah, there's just this feeling that comes in that's really, really gets in the way there. So
and what's the feeling?
The feeling is just like, it's uncomfortable. It's unfamiliar, right? It's new territory to expand in that way. So yeah, so it's like the coaching would be to help myself get into the process to move forward past that uncomfortable feeling of being in new territory.
And what's so dangerous or unsafe or uncomfortable about charging more?
That's a really good question. Well, it would be not being able to reach as many people, if that excludes people. Yeah.
Okay. And if it excludes people, then fill in the blank.
If it excludes people, then I'm not able to help the same people, or I might need to get really creative about ways that I can help people who would be excluded in a different way, which could be fun, to think outside the box in that way.
What if you 100% excluded people?
Right. If I excluded people, well, that would be disappointing, but there could be new people that I open up to. That's another possibility that's coming to my mind right now.
Okay. So there's a possibility that, okay, I exclude one avatar, whatever you want to call it, to include another. The question to you now would be, are you already excluding people right now?
That's a really good question. Yeah, I think I'm definitely excluding people because I've put a cap on my growth, right? So it just minimizes the amount of people that I can reach.
So you're basically stuck with the same problem, whether you move ahead or stay the same.
Yeah, I've never really thought of it that way. Yeah, that's helpful.
Okay. So is it really about excluding people, or is it about what that means about you?
Yeah, I got a kind of pit in my stomach when you said that, and I was like, yeah, there is something I'm kind of attached to that.
So if I invite you to just tune into that pit in your stomach, what might it be saying?
I instantly started to think about my dad, and sort of a feeling of feeling connected to him, actually, in the way that he's lived his legacy. because he's lived his legacy by really honestly giving it away for free. And he's had such a huge impact on a small group of people's lives, but it's gone so deep.
So is his legacy your legacy?
It's not my legacy. Yeah, it's not
Are
my
you
legacy.
living it like it is?
Yeah, I had this really profound moment once where I was really sinking into this, and I was sitting on the beach and all the seals were out playing that day, and I really realized I have to let go of his legacy. So I've thought about it before, and by letting go of his legacy, I can go further in mine. But yeah, there's still a little bit of that pit in my stomach about it. So I think it's about really like anchoring that, like really anchoring that more deeply, and really, really going, yeah, he would totally be cheering me on. He would be saying, live your own legacy. That's, that your legacy is going to really shine through when you really come home to yourself.
Absolutely. So he would
Mhm.
celebrate your own authenticity in
Mhm.
this process. What
Mhm.
I'm curious then is, how would he react if you made a lot of money and kept it?
Oh, he'd be really excited for me. Yeah, because he would want that for me, all that would bring into my life. And he would also want all of the impact that I can make, the ways that I can reach more people through doing that. And it's a way of being generous, right? It's through sharing money is a way to be really generous. So yeah, he'd be excited about it for me.
Okay. So
Mm-hmm.
it's like, okay, so his approval would
Mm-hmm.
be there,
Mm-hmm.
right? I can logically see that I'm not going to be somebody who's going to be greedy and like buy Ferraris. I'm going to put this money into good use, right?
Mm-hmm.
More impact, more ripple effects, and it's going to be
Mm-hmm.
positive, right? And I also have my like dad's blessing. Like I know I would have
Mm-hmm.
my blessing to like authentically step into all of this. So again, like very good awareness.
Mm-hmm.
So when I reflect that back to you, what's your disconnect between, okay, so I have all of these great
Mm-hmm.
positives about making this step, yet I've held myself back from years from making this step. What
Mm-hmm.
comes up for you as a disconnect?
Yeah, it just kind of dropped in. I think it's sort of getting past all those messages that I've heard from others about my worth, right? So because I originally was a trained stage actor, because I was a very creative person, a helping person, a woman, I have had a lot of conditioning that what I have to offer, my gifts, especially my feminine gifts of communication and creativity, compassion, collaboration, all of the things that are really huge parts of what I have to offer aren't of financial value to my community. That's something I've really lived with a lot in my life, is like that message coming to me. Like I remember being a teenager and doing a career aptitude test and coming out and telling my mom I have good news and bad news. The good news is I'm going to be really creative. I'm going to help lots of people. I'm going to teach. I'm going to be an artist. And the bad news is I'm going to be really poor. And it was just there from the beginning. And I'm really kind of tuning into this sort of feeling of kind of getting into a bit more of a warrior around it. Like just like putting out into the universe the change that I want to see in the world, like just really relating differently to those messages of sort of like, kung fuing it, or just really getting stronger in the message I want to bring forward, that
Right. It's like
those things
there's
are of financial value. Yeah. And just sort of get into that energy that starts to really shift the feeling in my belly, actually.
okay. So that feels exciting when you begin to think
Yeah.
about it. Yeah. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Yeah. And just
absolutely.
to make sure that I've heard you correctly, it's like, okay, so there's this throughout my life, there's a barrage of messages on
Mm-hmm.
what is appropriate, what's not appropriate, what I should or should not do, what is okay for the work that I'm in. Like if I have to be a starving artist versus I don't or whatever. There's all these messages coming your way. And it seems
Mm-hmm.
like that there's a big part of you that just kind of accepted those as truths.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're
So
in there still somehow, there's still impact, especially the one about my worth, right? And financial worth. What I do is financial worth to my community. Mm-hmm.
okay. So who is saying all those stories right now?
Who is saying those stories? I guess the voice in my head that I heard when in the past.
Okay. And where is that happening right now?
Where is that happening? I don't know where that's happening right now. It's like an idea.
Okay. So let's
Mm-hmm.
put it a different way, because I think this is troublesome for it to land initially.
Mm-hmm.
In this moment right now, are all those people who have showed you or told you how to live life here and present, or are those voices happening somewhere else?
Oh, somewhere else. They're not here and present.
Perfect. Where are they happening?
They're happening from the past. They're happening. What can you say more? What you mean by where are they happening?
So these stories, these voices, these
Mhm.
beliefs, these barrages, where are they happening? Who's saying them right now? If there's
Me.
nobody else around,
Yeah,
I'm
they're
not
me. They're
saying
in my
them.
mind.
Okay. So
Mm-hmm.
they exist in your mind,
Mm-hmm.
and who's actually saying them right now?
I am.
Okay.
I am.
And
Mm-hmm.
what lands for you when you say I am the one saying them?
I could do something about that. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Why?
Well, because I I create my story. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So these stories,
Yeah.
are they actually even yours?
No, they're not my story. They're
Right.
not mine.
So your reality and your ceilings of what's possible,
Mm-hmm.
your expectations around what's acceptable have all been adopted, consciously or not, by other people who are not actually living your life.
Mm-hmm.
But ultimately, you are the one that had to accept them.
Mm-hmm.
And you've continued to accept them going into like this conversation. I think this is opening up something, but it's like these stories are truths. Your life and your experience is evidence of their truth, but they were true because you believed them, and that was the lens through which you viewed the world,
Mm-hmm.
and then acting accordingly. And then those actions produce results that are going to reinforce the original story.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, what's landing for you for that?
Well, I'm just taking in the reframe. It's like my mind is going, even though I know what you're saying, like it's not new information, but it's landing in my mind in a different way. And I can feel that part of me that was attached to that going, oh, I need to take a look at that. And like it's backing off from that idea before and going, oh, this idea is this new truth is interesting.
Okay.
And I think
So,
that's what I feel is kind of like, oh, that sort of like, aha, kind of shift starting to happen a little bit.
right. So, there's a little bit of that like what if doubt. Like, what if
Yeah,
the world
definitely.
that
It's an
I,
excitement.
yeah, perfect. So, just for the sake of letting that land more,
Mm-hmm.
if you can, in your own words, kind of reflect back to me what your realization is and what your aha moments are at this stage.
Yeah, my aha moment is really when you were talking about how where is that coming from, and it's in me. It's that I'm creating it. It's in my head, and I've created these stories and kind of decided that it was my story, but it never was. It was never my story to begin with. So I given my power away to this story that I'd adopted as my own, but it never actually was my own. So in doing that, I have an opportunity. I have the opportunity to change my relationship to that past information and those and really take a stand that that's not my story. Those were never my stories, and I'm choosing this instead. Whereas I think before I knew it, but I still had a connection, like an attachment point to it being my story. So even though I knew it, it felt like there was that ping pong fight back and forth. I know that this isn't true, but somehow on a deeper level, this is my story. So there's sort of this pull. I'd pull away from it, and to try to create the new story, but the old story is pulling me back. Whereas now there's more of a separation, right? Oh, that was never my story. That wasn't mine. It's not mine. It's not mine. I'm not identified with that. And I can just sort of like more cleanly, separate, sort of cut that cord and go, okay, now I have all this freedom to move forward with creating the new direction I want to take.
Beautiful. So it kind of sounds like there's a part of you, like a part of your identity
Mm-hmm.
that you realized wasn't actually yours, but it was
Mm-hmm.
this thing that I was wearing.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, wait, hold on. Like, if I just remove that, what's underneath is actually me.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So, yeah, that's a very powerful realization. And it points to, like, why was it so hard to recognize this before? Because, like, if I'm wearing this thing as part of my identity, I'm always looking out. And
Mm-hmm.
it's the outer things that my attention is drawn to. But it's only when I look down and realize, well, this actually isn't mine and it doesn't actually fit, but I just wore it because I just wore it. Now it opens up the space to see what's underneath, wear a different thing that does fit you. Right, like this is where that's coming in. So
Mm-hmm.
how does that land for you?
Yeah, that really lands for me. And like on a kind of body experience, there's sort of this, it's like the mind would have an idea, but there's this sort of uncomfortable feeling in the body, but now feels like there's been kind of some distance from that, right? It's like, oh yeah, there's some distance and I can kind of work with it, and see and create from this new place. I don't feel that sort of tug back into that uncomfortable, old familiar feeling where I was, that was really stemming from feeling attached to that story as part of my identity.
Beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So the separation is starting to occur. There is space.
Yeah.
So from that, if you were to double your prices right now, how does that
Mm-hmm.
feel?
Oh, that's a big leap.
I know.
I'll have to sit with that. That might be another call. Yeah, if I was to double my prices, I certainly like the idea to feel into that idea. As I've done some market research, so I know where I want to go with things. I'm not sure if it's doubling it, but it's that feeling of doubling and expansion to that degree. I like that feeling of bringing that into the mix as I along with my market research to kind of really, really solidly land where I want to in increasing my prices.
Okay. So it's a
Mm-hmm.
beautiful rationalized answer.
Mm-hmm. Thank
So
you.
yeah. So if your next prospect
Yes.
books a discovery call with you tomorrow
Mm-hmm.
and you tell them your prices are double, they
Mm-hmm.
don't have to know what your prices were before, but you double your prices,
Mm-hmm.
how does that feel in your body?
Well, there's a bit of excitement. Yeah.
Okay, good,
Yeah, there is. Yeah.
good. And what else is there?
There's there's kind of a bit of the breaks of going, I don't know if that's where I want to land on my prices, but there's an expansive feeling, and then probably just a feeling of just wanting to sink into that and deepen into that for myself, right? Maybe just like, hey, I want to make this. Maybe those are the breaks of like, hey, I want to really sit with this and really feel into it. But I want to take that feeling of expansion in. Like I like that feeling of expansion.
Got it. So it's kind of, I guess maybe overall there's some ambivalence there. I both want to and I don't want to at the same time. Or I
Yeah,
want to, or I would learn to gradually get there as opposed to do it abruptly. Like it's not a
yeah.
clear cut yes or no.
Well, I definitely want to raise my rates. Like I feel that feeling. And then when you bring in the word double, it's like, oh, is that my truth? Right. So, but I like the feeling of excitement that comes. I want to sit in that some more and kind of let that kind of inform me and not let the brakes come on too strong. Yeah.
Perfect. So
Mhm.
If we were to contrast that, so instead of doubling it, let's just say you increase it by, I don't know, 50%.
Mhm. Mhm.
What's the feeling now?
Yeah, that feels good.
Okay.
Mhm.
So by good, what do you mean specifically? It feels comfortable. It feels right. It feels
Yeah, it feels
aligned.
right.
Something
Yeah, I feel
else.
kinda solid in myself. Mhm.
Okay. Perfect. So yeah, then I would play around with it, because oftentimes what feels right from the consciousness of, let's just say, the limitation that we've been living in is like the edges of the limitation.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that is or isn't you. I think we'd have to do more exploration to see. That's why I wanted to just kind of check. And the reason why I'm inviting you to dive deeper into that is, if I told you, like, if I said, okay, double your prices, and it was like, no, that's just like crazy. I can't charge that much.
Mhm.
And I'd be like, okay, so like that's either like there's more work to do thought wise, but there was like a level of like excitement. There was like, ooh, I,
Mhm.
I want to expand into that. But if I only do it 50%, like, okay, like, yeah, it feels good. I'm okay with that. Right. It's like, is
Mhm.
that really enough of a stretch to really align to the highest version of you? Or is it kind of
Mhm.
the placating middle of, okay, fine, I will have made this shit. So it's like, did we solve the problem 30% type of deal?
Yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
That's
Yeah,
the
I
only
think
reason why I invite you in it. I don't obviously care what you charge, but there's something there that is still not 100% clear.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I feel that. I feel like that's the place to sink into a little bit more for myself. Mhm.
Perfect. So
But
yeah,
I
so
like the gift you're offering. It's really giving me that place to explore that inside.
correct. So yeah,
Mhm.
definitely happy to do that. And I think you, again, like I said before, like you're very self-aware. So I think you'll know what it is you need to do here. So for the sake of like this container with regards to the podcast, etc., like does this feel complete for you? Or is there still something left outstanding?
It does. Yeah, no, I've definitely gotten some really great value, and I also feel really clear on that last gift that I'm going to take further. Mhm.
Beautiful. So in that case, if you can just summarize in your own words what you came into this conversation thinking was the issue or you needed to fix, and then
Mhm.
what were your realizations and takeaways as a result of the conversation?
Yeah, great. So I came in really excited to grow my business and feeling stuck because I felt myself capping my growth because I felt uncomfortable to raise my rates. Even though I've done a lot of market research, even though I've been thinking about this and like trying to do that for a while, and I I knew it in my head. I know the direction to go, but there was a stuck feeling, and I just couldn't really get past the sort of feeling that would come up in like the pit of my stomach. And what I realized through the call is that I was attached to this idea of all of these stories that I've heard all my life about my worth, in what I have to offer. I had uh, I had kind of framed that as being my story, and the story of my past that I'm trying to break free from. But really, it never was my story. And the people that shared those things with me they're not in my life. They're not people I'm supporting. They're not anything to do with the direction that I'm moving in. So there's kind of this feeling of sort of separation, like this kind of like cutting the cord from that attachment. I had this sense of identity connected to that story. And when that happened, I felt really freed up to create my own story and started to really get into the feeling of excitement, of expansion and growth that can happen when I raise my rates, because I will be able to help more people.
Wonderful. I mean, I couldn't have summarized it better myself. So yeah, I think it's a testament to your storytelling abilities,
Thank you.
110%. So yeah, in that case, if you can just close us off, let
Mhm.
everybody know, who's the best person to find you, where can they find you, before you increase your prices, floor is yours
Mhm.
for that.
Great. You can find me at storyinspired at daynakneeland.com. You can find me on Facebook, and And my name's really unique. So it's Dayna, like daytime, and Kneeland with a K. So Kneeland. And you can find me through my name because I'm the only one.
Awesome. Love it. Well, we will include all of those in the show notes as always. But Dayna, thank you very much for coming on and sharing a very common issue so openly and vulnerably. So thank you very much for that.
My pleasure. Thank you.
You're very welcome. And for everybody else listening, as always, we'll see you on the next one.